All right, everyone, let's start this live discussion. See if I can get, there he is.
Hey,
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for
yeah, you're
joining me this
welcome.
morning.
I'm looking at this, but I see a big white piece that says "Go live," but
Oh, yeah, you're
I can
live. I don't
see
know.
like half of it.
Can you see me? Okay. I don't know what
So
is going
strange.
on. I can see you
Okay,
perfectly.
well, let's run with it.
Hmm. Okay. We'll roll with it. All right, everyone. So anyone that's coming in to join or watching later, the famous Mario Mitchell is joining me today. I'm super excited for this opportunity. Just from what I've been able to get to know about you, has just been so inspiring. And I know that you are changing so many people by this your story, your aspirations, from what you're doing in your own community and just around everywhere. And everyone that seems to cross your path, you're touching their life in one way or the other. So I just wanted to have this opportunity to, even from my small stage, be able to kind of share a little bit about you and learn, so much just on this
Uh,
one-on-one time with you.
well,
So
I
again,
appreciate
thank you
that
so much for joining
introduction.
me this morning.
Just a normal man trying to do my thing, but I opportunity to sit down and talk with you for sure.
Yeah, well, I won't tell your backstory. That's your story to tell. But just from what I've learned, you are just infatuated with your wife. I love all the posts that you post about her and how gorgeous she is, and the devoted father that you are, an incredible businessman. Like, you have success on so many levels, and not a lot of people get to see that. They become super successful in one area of their life and they lack in so much. And it seems as though I have a common theme with these folks that I'm kind of letting in the circle, is that you have it kind of figured out. You have it where you found your happiness and you're a great family man, and the business kind of all comes together. So something that that I've seen, I guess I should say, is that you have every excuse in the book. If there was ever a person to have an excuse of why not to be a good person or why not to be successful, you have some valid reasons in your past to be that person. But yet you've overcome all of it and become such a wonderful inspiration to so many people. So I guess let's just kind of dive in. Like, how were you able to kind of overcome so much adversity in your life to be able to be this
That's a
person
great
that you are
question.
today?
I ask myself that quite a bit. I think all of us all have a story, right? We all have a backstory of how we became who we are as individuals. But for me, I think if I was ever to change my path or had the option to change my path of existence, I would not at this point in my life right now. I'm extremely proud and humble as I became older, but as a young adult, growing up, uh, a son to a prostitute, to a massively abusive father, to being homeless on the streets from age 8 till age 12, just trying to survive, and being put in a group home from 12 to 18, living in 63 different foster homes over the night, being passed from house to house, enslaved, beaten, all these random that I can talk for hours about. Definitely trajected myself into the path of where I am. And to your point, yes, could I have absolutely gone down paths of drugs and alcohol and abuse on top of different things? But for me, it was people that were surrounded by me as a young adult that put me into athletics and taught me how to be a part of a team, which ultimately became my family, which ironically transitioned into real estate, right? I grow a team. Those are my family members around me.
Mm-hmm.
They keep me motivated, keep me thinking positively, and challenges me on a live basis. So all of us can make decisions on where we want to go and how we want to look at some of the moments in our life and say, man, this is horrible, and stay focused on the horrible side of it, or what can I do every single morning to make that day the best day I can possibly have. And I think that's the gift that was given to me through the challenges that I had, is I could give up in that moment, or I can go to bed, wake up, make my bed, and rise to the occasion and be more excited about the opportunities that are in front of me. And know that that's the blessing. The blessing is that I was able to wake up and live another day and enjoy that day as if it's my last. And I still live that way today, right? I do work hard, but what I've learned is, when I was younger in this business of real estate, 20 years I've been doing this now, the majority of it, I'd say 14 years of that 20, I was very transactionally based. I was addicted to money. I made a ton of money and I was filthy rich. I had all kinds of excitement with that money. But every morning I woke up, I was extremely empty on the inside. And it wasn't until, probably 7 years ago that I met with someone you may know, Chris Stewart. And he was the one that said, man, I think you need to get to know who you really are and understand who you are, and then figure out how to use that to drive you somewhere else. So going away from the transactionally based business and learning how to not use my clients and my skill as a base to just make money, but to learn how to get to know people and to build honest relationships. That when that transition happened in my life, in my career, that's where my true numbers started to grow. So if I can tell anybody in this business is, in real estate, don't look at it as a quick buck, which I think some of us do when we first initially get into the business, because it can be. But when you learn to really get to know your people, now I've got clients like today, I just had a closing at 9 o'clock. I mean, this person's been with me for the last 8 years and I've sold them 4 homes. I've known their whole family throughout it. And I've got to know all their children. I mean, that's really the beauty in our business as real estate agents. And the irony of all that, growing up as a homeless kid and never having a true home until I got out of college, is now I help people find the homes of their dreams. So the beauty in this business is when you find that gem of what we are gifted to be as licensed realtors, in helping people find that, not just a home, but what that home provides for each person, there's truly is some beauty in all of that. I think some of us get lost in the fancy stuff that you see with all the money that these realtors are spending, or the facade that we make a ton of money. Some do, but some are still, struggling to get by. And I think when they figure it out and how to create business on a deeper level, in learning how to build relationships, if you will. I always tell my team, it's not about how many transactions you write, it's how many relationships you build. And the more relationships you build, the more transactions you'll get. And if you learn that part of it, it becomes so much easier, this business, or any business for that matter, if it's a sales driven business.
I love that. Yeah, and that's something that I preach with especially with newer agents. It's the foundation that you build in the business. It's the longevity of it. It's not just like you were saying, it's not transactional. It's not just one and done. It's this is how we build our business for the rest of our lives, is building the relationships with the folks that are going to trust us time and time again. I love what you said about, for the first 14 years, it was very transactional based and it was all money based. And I know it's so cliche to hear everyone saying, you have to know your why, you have to know your why. It seems as though that moment, whenever you had that discussion with Chris, which I love him, he kind of reminded you like, hey, what is your why? Like, why do you want to do this? And so what did that look like as far as that transition from, okay, I getting up, doing this and closing this deal, to, okay, I need to, kind of switch gears a little bit and do more relationship. Like, was that a tough transition for you, do you think?
It was, because I was never honest to myself. I think I was afraid of who I was, because on the outside, people are like, oh, he's a top agent, he's this, he's that, he does all these things. And that was the facade I created all my life, right? Was to hide all of my past. And I wasn't proud of my past. I didn't want to be judged on my past. And I didn't want people to to be afraid of my past, including myself, right? Because it's something that's hard to hide. And then when Chris and I were in California and talking about that, when we flew away from each other, and I came back and I sat down and I looked at my past and decided that maybe there's something there. Maybe I can just talk about it and release some of the information that I've been repressing over these years. So I think everybody's why changes over time, right? But if you honestly knew what your purpose in life was, then maybe your why wouldn't change, right? Because my why could be for my wife and my children, but then I get a divorce. I'm like, oh shit, now I got to change my why. Because right? But that can't always be
Right,
your
right.
why. It's important. But I
Hmm.
think for me, in that conversation with Chris, was learning that I had to understand the depth of who I was and what I was willing to share. So when I open up to people, it's not to inspire people, it's not to motivate people. It's honestly just allowing people to know that it's okay to be who you are. And when you understand how it is to get naked in front of the crowd, if you will, and just open up all your walls and let people in,
Hmm.
that allows me to know more about who I am, which ultimately becomes the reasons of why I do what I do. And I think that's my honest why, is just being me. Finally know how to be me.
I love that. That's so incredible. And there's so many, and you are honestly just really, being vulnerable by opening up about your past. There's so many people that have a story that aren't comfortable in sharing it. And I think that you help, you know, other folks kind of open up and say, okay, these were my struggles. Look how far I've come. Like you have a story where you can say, this is where I was and this is where I am now. You can actually look at where you are now and be truly grateful for the amount of that you've had to endure to go through. I mean, I know it's grateful is an odd word to use, but you're able to look at your before and after, and then people like yourself that are so successful in so many ways, it's like, okay, you've achieved this, now what's next? That's why folks like yourself are always going to be the best of what you do, because you're not just settling for where you've made it. You're like, okay, I've achieved this goal, now what's next? But it's not even just the goal in itself, it's the purpose of what you're doing and the drive behind why you're doing that. So, I mean, it's just all inspiring to see all the interviews. I've watched so many that you've done, and everyone's always just so blown away by the knowledge and your passion and your humbleness to be able to share it. So
Yeah,
again,
no, I appreciate
thank you
that.
for
I think,
opening up like that.
even in the past 10 years, it's folks like you and the ability of social media. And it's so crazy to say that in the last 10 years, because 10 years is not that long ago. But now it's these types of interviews
Right.
and these types of moments that we can share, from Myrtle Beach to Charlotte, North Carolina, or wherever that may be, and allowing people in on a live or just in a room, to be able to talk, because sharing in this business, and I think EXP is very good with that. So is Real, and there's a lot of different smaller firms that are really good at sharing. Where I grew up in the business, nobody shared. Nobody wanted to share information right now,
Right.
I'm so excited to see how our industry is starting to transition into a very sharing community where we can all just lift each other up, share ideas, and be able to create
Mhm.
a better business for not just ourselves internally, but also for the communities around us.
Yeah, and that's so true, because a lot of folks will come into the industry or have been in it for a while, and they feel like it's so dog eat dog. You can't share your secrets to how you've been successful, and we've all run into those people. But to be vulnerable and be real and say, hey, I've done this, I've struggled through this. The cool thing that I've learned about your business is you used to, when you were in Washington, D.C., you did a lot of cold calling. And I'm sure that was the more of the transactional aspect of it. And then whenever you moved to North Carolina, it had to kind of switch gears a little bit. But now you have the best of both worlds. Now you can do the business with the cold calling or the relationship and kind of mush them together. Now, kind of switching gears just a tiny bit, did I hear that you typically hold about
Yeah,
100 listings?
yeah,
Is
it's
that
all
is that
new
normal? Is that
construction
is that
based,
about
so
right?
we're staying between 75 to 100. It's what we do. And the reason why that is
Mm-hmm.
that way from COVID, I learned through another one of my mastermind groups that I went to from Florida. This man was telling me that consignment was the way to go. And I was like, what in the world? Again, if it wasn't for these moments where people were able to share things, I wouldn't have learned about consignment. And that was really land and being able to purchase land and transition that land and turn it into a higher density. By able to increase the density of all land purchases that I get into, it now gives me more live property that I'll be able to hold over 2 to 3 years, depending on the size of the project. And that's why where the listing content starts to grow. So when the market changes like it has, right, which I was planning for in
Mm-hmm.
during COVID, it now allows me to control my inventory. And that's the secret sauce, if you will, is finding land, understanding the land deals,
Awesome.
learning how to do consignment, and then controlling all those listings, keeping the model homes, putting my team in there, and then controlling not only the way that the homes sell from a commission side of it, but also being able to create the developer side and the builder side so that I can get to the next project and keep those listings throughout time.
That's so how did you end up coming into that? I think I heard a little bit of the story about someone had said just buy dirt, but how is it that you kind of learned the
Yep.
situation, how
So
to do what you're
there
doing
is
now? Like, how did that
a
transition go?
closers group that I'm a part of, and one of the owners out of Destin, Florida, he built his business that way in consignment. So I just reached
Mm,
out to him in a mastermind group where anybody can figure out how to learn to get inside of these mastermind groups. And I just gave him a call and he walked me
mm.
through how to do it. And then I fumbled into my first purchase deal. I went through it, made all the mistakes that you're supposed to make. I learned along the way. And that's just what life is about, right? You just have to be able to take that leap of faith. And every one of us should be able to do it because in real estate, honestly, it is a leap of faith because you weren't grown to be a realtor, right? Everybody's got a degree or they got some past and then they
Right.
come into real estate. Our take a leap of
Right.
faith. Most people are coming from a salary position into no salary, right? So if you can become a licensed realtor, then you can do all of these versions of it. So it's just finding the right person that's
Yeah.
willing to teach you another way to do your business and to grow your wealth over time.
Heck yeah, that's so awesome. And something that again, that I'm always a big fan of is, reaching out to people that are wildly more, more successful than you are and that know a little bit more and being mentored by those people because those are the people that are always willing to share the knowledge. I mean, just like yourself, like I reached out to you and said, hey, can we have this conversation? And that seems to be something that's been super important in your life is that you've never been afraid of the ask. Like, hey, I want to know more about whatever it may be, the basketball or business or masterminds, like however it may be. So that seems to be pretty important and prevalent in your life,
That,
right? I
that's
mean,
that's
the
what I
whole
what
reaching
I
out.
am a firm believer in is I don't know everything. In fact, I'm probably the most uneducated person you'll ever meet. Right? It was hard getting me to acclimate back into school from being in the woods for 4 years. So I knew nothing. I had to
Mm,
learn quite a bit. And I still, educationally, if you put me in testing paperwork, so I'm like bottom of the class. But what I do know is that my drive to learn and my desire to learn is significantly different than everyone else. I don't have that fear of, hey man, teach me, because that's what I want to learn. I want to learn from
right.
everybody. A friend that we both know, John Sy, when I was with him in Hawaii, I wanted to speak to him just because of the energy he carries, right? So when we had lunch together
Mm,
and getting to know about him and his family, how he grew up and his trouble, his challenges with his family. I mean, there's some really dynamic, significant, I guess, similarities that we have. That's what it's all about is meeting people. And then for him to get elevated into running all of Canada, or not, sorry, Canada, Vancouver.
mhm.
So, that's
Yeah.
just neat to see that you're able to meet people like that and then have that relationship that you can call on somebody. So going to masterminds, if I can say anything, and if anybody's listening or, follows you at some point, is get involved in a small group mastermind, and don't be afraid to ask. Because what I know better than a lot of my competitive people is that I do execute, right? And I think a lot of us fail to execute. We ask, get all the information, and then we do nothing with it. But I'm going to execute, good or bad. And I fail all the time, but that's when I learn. I love to fail. I'm a big fan of failure. So that's my gift is I love to fail because
Yeah. Yeah, you learn that way. And I was having this conversation with my daughter last night because she's 15 and she's all about listening to podcasts. Thank God, and she's like really following a really good path. And I told her almost word for word what you just said about failure. Some of the most successful people are built on the foundations of thousands of failures. I mean, like they have failed so many times, but that is how you learn. You're never just gonna. I can't say never, but there's never good, there's rarely a time in which you pick something and you're just automatically going to succeed at without failing at least one time. So the fact that you have to be comfortable and humble enough to say, okay, that didn't work. Like, what next? You have to just keep going, keep pushing forward. So I love that you said that about the failure because it's so true. And there's so many people that are just afraid. They get what I can't think of the actual verbiage for it, but they could just kind of get like stage fright once they figure out all the information. They're just like, okay, I'm gonna just sit back now. They have everything they have that they could do with to
yeah.
be successful, and they
And
never do anything
it
with
goes
it.
back to taking that leap of faith again, right? You know,
Hmm.
your success is not going to be built in comfort, right? Discomfort is what gives you the opportunities of success. If you're comfortable, you're probably not going to get anywhere. You have to find discomfort to get to the next level, and that's surrounding yourself with people that have done it before you and have paved the path already, um, or just going against the grain and trying something new and pioneering your way through something. But at the end of the day, you're always going to need dedication, communication, and hard work. We really have to commit to whatever it is that you want to do in life and in relationships. I mean, it is what we have to be able to do as an individual and be vulnerable for sure. And I wasn't vulnerable for most of my life, but the latter part in these last, 10 years of my life have been my most exciting 10 years. Because
The
you,
big
because
growth
it's
moment.
really who I am, right? 10 years ago, I wore a suit on
Hmm.
all my appointments. I didn't have tattoos. I tried to fit into every role. Now I do what I want to do. I am who I am. People know who I am. The
Yeah.
beautiful part about social media is that people get to know and trust who you are in an instant, where before you show up and you're trying to fit a role. Now they've already know who you are. They've already done their background research. So this has given us such an easier introduction to our peers and our communities. And I think people don't take advantage of it as much as they should.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I know we've all been in the situation where we're like, man, I just feel like I've known you my whole life, and you've never, like, we've never met in person. And although I feel like I know your whole story, I don't know if it's creepy or not, but it is. It's just like you do get to know people on a different level, and kind of see like behind the scenes before you get to meet them in person. And there's not a lot of people that want to be that vulnerable and kind of put everything out there, but it does help. What would you suggest? Because I know there's a lot of folks that want to be part of masterminds, but they don't really know where to start. And I always just, ask them to ask me. I'm sure they can ask you as well. But how have you been able to find these masterminds
Um,
that have helped you
so
so
I was
much?
invited to one, but then coaching is one way, right? You can obviously, if you have the money, you pay
Hmm.
in the coaching. In my opinion, you should invest in your business anyway. So pay for a coach if you can. Um, or if you can't, take that leap of
Hmm.
faith and see what the coach can do for you. Um, but as far as the masterminds within your office or within your worlds or however you get around to people, you just throw it out there. Hey, I'm looking for a great mastermind that I can jump into. I'm looking for higher
Hmm.
production or team producing. You can find different types of masterminds. Um, I've got two different ones. I've got my mastermind group of all business owners, like CEOs and things of that nature, that I spend a lot of time with. And then I have my smaller mastermind group, which is all different walks. It's not just real estate related, it's all different types of people, because I want to learn from all different ways.
Yeah.
But to get into that, Facebook groups are very easy to jump into, and just kind of search through that and throw it out there. I'm looking for a local mastermind, or I'm looking for a Zoom mastermind. There's lots of different versions. I personally like in person. So I fly to my masterminds and do things of that nature, so we can sit together for 2 or 3 days and be a secret sauce behind closed
Yeah.
doors, where everybody's kind of relaxed, having a bourbon and talking about business. Um, Instead of sitting on a
I love
stage
that.
and,
Yeah.
or in a room and knowing that you got to talk for an hour. So it's something more when you get to that level. There's so much more to people when you get to know them when they're not on a stage, if that
Mm.
makes some sense. Um, and then, I started doing my things with Standout. And I really do that, honestly, if I'm being very honest, I'm doing that to learn from everybody else that's in the room, so that I can things that I don't know versus picking up the
Mm.
phone and asking people, but at the same time sharing with the community of realtors. And sometimes there are people that aren't licensed realtors that show up. And that's just because I need to know more. So selfishly, I created that so that I can learn from other people. But those are great too. And I know there's a lot of them starting to grow, and your company's got a ton of them. Brent Gove is great at doing his.
Mhm.
You can jump on that. And Gene Frederick's a really good
Mhm.
friend of mine. So he's got different side views.
Yeah.
And then locally, I think everybody's got versions of it. It's just jump into something.
Just trying to, just not being afraid of the ask, right? Like just saying, hey, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, when are you going to do another event? Because I missed the
is in
last one, so I want to go to
October.
the
It's
next
going to
one.
be in Destin, Florida. We haven't announced it yet, but it definitely will be.
Mhm.
And then we have one thereafter. Will be in Charlotte area, which may be a little closer to you. But we'll keep advertising them, and um,
Yeah.
maybe we get into that Myrtle Beach area next year. Yeah.
That would be great. I'll help set it up. Just bring it
It's
on.
building relationships like this is why I picked those areas to do it, so
Mhm.
that we have a core group of good friends that we can, share for the community people around us.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, like I so appreciate you taking this time with me. I told you I'd only take 30 minutes of your time because I know you're a very busy man. You've already had a closing already this morning, so I'm sure you have a
Yeah.
lot left for the rest of your day. Um, is there any on the last note, is either a quote that you like to live by or a book that you love to promote? Is there anything that you would like to leave with anybody
I think
before
what I'd
we
like to
head
leave
out?
behind is learn to build relationships. Get out of your comfort zone. If you're at a
Mm.
restaurant, talk about it. I was very guilty of never letting anyone know that I was a real estate agent. I was ashamed that I was a real estate agent for a good part of my life because I was so transactionally based. I'd take your listings. So I think build relationships, and the more relationships you build, the more transactions you'll get.
Mm.
Forget about writing contracts and just go out there and meet people.
I love that. That's so great, and it's so true. It's just building it for the lifetime, right? The trajectory, the long term goal here. Well, thank you so much. I really truly appreciate all your time this morning, and I will be sure to tag you below so anyone that's going to watch this, watched it today or watching in the future, to follow you in your journey because it's awe inspiring.
Jess, you're a
So
rock
thank you
star.
so
Keep
much
it up.
again for everything.